In 2017, Vicarious Visions gave us the fully remastered versions of the 3 original Crash trilogy for the PlayStation, the classics that made Crash into one of the legendary mascots he is today. After the confirmed revival of Crash, fans were really excited to see the Bandicoot return to form. I was excited too, not just because Crash was back, but because I was able to play the 3 games that started his career. Yeah, I actually never played the original trilogy on the PlayStation. I grew up with the PlayStation 2, which had Wrath of Cortex, Twinsanity, and even Tag Team Racing. Those were the games that introduced me to Crash. With that said, these are really good recreations of the Crash trilogy. I love Crash's new design as well as the other characters. These are all great models of the characters we all know and love. They're perfect. The levels look amazing as well. They're so detailed and outstanding, especially with Crash 3, as the stages in that game are about you time traveling to different regions. Unlike with Crash 1 and 2, where you're just traveling in the forest stage, the ice stage, and eventually Cortex's base. Don't get the wrong idea, the levels look amazing too. It's just Crash 3's levels just have more variety. And with that stated, there's the gameplay. The Sane Trilogy plays very similar to its original counterparts in terms of structure and difficulty. Crash 1 has you jumping and running to get to the goal, with some enemies getting in the way. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Alright, let's get real here. Crash 1 has to be one of the hardest Crash games I have ever played. What makes the game so hard, you may be asking? Well, I don't know, let's see. How about those very tight jumps you had to make when surrounded by bottomless pits or drowning sequences? Or maybe those enemies who love to give you a knockback? Wait, I know, how about those auto run stages with you're forced to ride on an animal and avoid as many things as possible while having slow turns. Guys, this is pretty much the definition of the first Crash game. Now, to be fair, the next 2 games are also just as difficult in their own rights, but it's mitigated by Crash's new abilities and the levels themselves. I don't see myself playing this one after the review. It's just too hard to be enjoyable for me. Alright, I think it's about time I finish this with Cortex Strikes Back and Warped. I won't be discussing too much of Cortex Strikes Back since not a whole lot changed from the Bandicoot's first title. The only new thing I can think about is the slide jump. The slide jump is a cool technique that lets you jump a long distance, and slightly it lets you jump higher. It makes you even faster too. The levels themselves are just as challenging as the first title, but not as hard or impossible. And finally, we have Crash Bandicoot Warped. This one in general is the easiest Crash game. However, that doesn't mean the game isn't frustrating. But before that, let's talk about the boss fights that I've been dodging for a minute. Now, the bosses can be very challenging, specifically Crash 1's. I died 50 times more than 2 and 3's. Now, it could be that I'm not just good at the game, but you know, I didn't have this much of a hard time with Crash 2 and 3. I can deal with Crash 2's because it's all about the timing and patience. I can breeze through Crash 3's bosses without a problem, but 1's? No way, I might just break my controller in half. But speaking of 3, I highly recommend playing this one as your starting point. The levels aren't as hard, and you gain some additional abilities that make the game 10 times better. After defeating the bosses, you'll be able to gain these movesets. My favorites are the Death Tornado Spin and the Dash. The Tornado Spin lets you glide for about 5 seconds, and the Dash lets you run faster. There's also this cannon that lets you shoot Wumpa Fruit and the Belly Flop. I don't use these 2 that much, but they have their uses. With all 4 of these abilities combined together, Crash has never been so much fun to play with until now. It's even easier to get all the gems. Overall, the Crash Bandicoot Sane Trilogy is a fantastic remake of its original games. There's really no reason why you would play the originals unless you wanted to see how the Bandicoot's career started. With that said, I am the Royal 9. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next video.